Welcome back to the show. Whether you draw the inspiration from the leaders in your life, whether it be teachers, parents, friends, coworkers, they're all mentors for the position that you are aspiring to be. And nobody knows that better than Audley Stephenson. He's a motivational speaker and author of this new book, Gifts from Others, which is a compilation of more than 500 quotes and life lessons from mentors in his life. Audley, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Glad to have you here. Now, we'll talk about your book in a second. Congrats on all the success there. But let's talk about mentors in general. I'd like to know, why are mentors so important?
Well, mentors are tremendous for even just the learning curve of life. You think about sort of all the greatest lessons that you learn, and I even think back to my own personal experiences. When I reflect back on some of the really key lessons I've learned, they've come from other people, and that's kind of the concept of what Gifts from Others is about, that other people teach us the things that we learn. And you know, they're so integral, and oftentimes I think we forget or undervalue the importance of mentoring and what that means. And something that gets confused with mentoring a lot oftentimes, that there seems to think that it's got to be a formalized structure, that I've got to be in a designated program, we meet once a week. That's not necessarily what mentorship is. It can be, sure, but it encompasses much more than that. And you can have someone that's your mentor that you've never met before. Maybe there's someone that's written something that you've appreciated, that you've learned from. So really, anyone that can teach you anything has the potential to be your mentor.
Very, very interesting. So why do children and young people need mentors in their lives?
Well, just to guide them on the path of what's right. And again, going back to that saving the learning curve, you think oftentimes, again, the things that you've learned over the course of your life, and how much how much time could have been saved by learning from even someone else's mistakes. And I think too, when we think about what mistakes are, they're not a bad thing. They're a learning opportunity. And I think the best mistake that you can make is where you walk away with the lesson, but then you can actually teach someone else what your lesson was. So
in turn, the mentee becomes the mentor.
Absolutely.
Almost.
I think mentorship is a two-way relationship. It's not just me and talking to you. It's back and forth and can be reciprocated. So absolutely, for sure.
So everybody can learn different
absolutely,
lessons from each other.
Sometimes you got to look down to find the person to learn something from.
Right.
Sure.
Very, very interesting. Very cool. So can adults have mentors too then? Is it not just, I mean typically you think of an older person helping out a younger person, but it's not always that way necessarily?
It's not. And here's the thing, the starting point to understand is learning happens over the course of our entire lives. There's never a point in our lives where we've gotten it all. And there's different stages in our lives that we gain insights, we see things differently, but we never ever learn it all. And everything in my book isn't everything that you can encompass today, and that's it. It's an ongoing learning process, and if you sit down and talk to an elderly person, you can learn a lot about them, and they can also in turn learn something from you as well.
Very solid point. I like that a lot. So what makes a good mentor? What are the skills and the mindset that have to embody someone who wants to be a good mentor?
Definitely someone that's open and honesty. I mean, you have to really have the best intent for that other person. You want to be able to really impart something on them that they can take and walk away with, and to make themselves, or that they can apply in their own lives, or make themselves better, if you will. That's a term I oftentimes use, making yourself better. And as well too, so you want the best for that person, open and honest. And you've got to be open to yourself to understand that there's different ways that you can learn. So I can tell you, well, I learned it this way and it's good enough for you. Well, not necessarily, right? Like, the way we all learn is different, our learning styles. And so a bit of understanding that, and then obviously communication as well is another big one. But just understanding that we all do things differently.
So does one mentor, like if Peter has a mentor, is that going to be the same mentor that would apply to me then? It
can be. Like, it really comes down to what you take from the relationship. And perhaps Peter, that mentor out there, taught you something that was really profound in your life in that exact moment. And that's a really big key to understand this as well. We can read something today. So someone could say, read my book today, and pick up something. And then tomorrow or next week or next year, because of the mindset, their frame of approach, their own personal growth, their own personal learning, could see it totally different 5 years from now. So a lot of it depends on where you are individually and how ready you are to learn.
Interesting.
So, Peter, you might know something today that, maybe next week is totally different from me. Who knows, right?
Who knows?
That's a very interesting thought. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to know, you're such a positive individual. You exude this insane energy. What are some mentors that you've had in your life?
What's interesting is I've learned a lot from a lot of people that weren't, famous celebrities, that weren't, had legions of fans or nothing like that. Just everyday people that have taken the time to teach me a few things in my life. In my book, I talk about a music teacher who taught me an awful lot about patience, and you know, basically, the story I was telling was he was teaching me how to play an instrument, and I really wasn't passionate about it. I just did it just because.
Right.
But he was so enthusiastic and so passionate about it that he wanted me to continue to do it, even though I wasn't committed to it. And that for me was a very good learning that I walked away from going, wow, like despite what was going on, he still held firm to who he was, what he believed in, and he didn't let anything outside, i.e. the kid with the bad attitude didn't want to learn, he didn't let that change how we operated. So I mean, those are the sorts of individuals who, you know, who I've been fortunate enough to come in my life that have taught me, and that's where I get so much of my learning from. Then, you know, your parents, and you know, my mother was awesome, and you know, close friends and what have you. But I think the key is understanding that anyone, going back to that point, anyone can teach you anything at any point in time in your life.
I like that. I'm sure you had mentors growing up in your life as well.
Oh, yes,
You said you were in the office for 13 years before stepping out.
Oh yeah. Well, my greatest mentor was my older brother, I think, because you learn so much from your family and your older brother. And if you have other siblings, you know, he is who I am today, I think. Like sports-wise, books, or you know, just anything in general. I look up to him a lot.
Well, I oftentimes think that, you know, I sit here today as a collection of a whole bunch of people, because I've drawn from different things that I've really liked in people, and I've included that into who I am. So, you know, I don't, you know, for me, again, fortunate enough to have that wide cross-section of individuals I've been exposed to, but I myself was open to the learning, and I myself was open to figuring out that's what I like, and I want to do that and add that into me, and that's so important.
So where would you be if you didn't have these mentors then?
That's a real good question. I don't know. Again, it's the path that we take on our lives. It's, you know, I oftentimes think our life is a sort of a collection of experiences, and each time we've made a choice to do something, it leads down another path. But ultimately, I really believe that the path that we take, that we end up on, is where we're supposed to be. So I don't know where I would be. I just know where I am and where I'm going, and that's where I should be. So that's the best answer to your question, I guess.
I think that's a great answer to the question. Yeah, absolutely. So do you want to you know, inspire people with this book?
Yeah, you know, this book it served a couple reasons for me. I mean, mentorship is the underlying theme, and really the whole gifts from others concept is that, you know, going back to what we touched on earlier, is that, you know, anyone at any point can teach someone something else.
I like that.
And that's, yeah.
And we'll get into it a little bit more as well when we come back after this. Audley Stephenson joining us, and we'll talk more about the book, Gifts from Others, a collection of quotes all about mentorship and learning from the mentors in your life, whether they're friends, family, teachers, anybody at all that you can look up to. Back on Daytime with more when we come back. Peter's going to be sticking around as well. It's all after this short break. Welcome back to the show. Talking to Audley Stephenson today. He's joining Peter and I on the couch, talking all about mentors, the ones that inspire you in your life every single day. And he's compiled 500 quotes in this book, Gifts from Others. Audley Stephenson, thank you so much for sticking around.
This is cool, man. I appreciate this, guys.
I think it's cool, too. It's very cool. It's nice to just have these inspirational ideas at your fingertips to go to when the mentors in your life aren't necessarily there. But what made you decide to compile all of these quotes into a book?
You know, it was a collection of learnings, and it was kind of, I felt it was necessary, as we were talking off air. I had written a previous book called Basketball Talk the Way It Should Be. I host a basketball podcast, and we had over 400 quotes from different guests that we've had on our program, NBA players, celebrities, what have you. And that was a really cool and fun experience to go through. And we wrote that, and I'm like, wow, that's great. And we put it out there, and we got a lot of great feedback. And I said, okay, and that's cool. Now it's time for something of real substance. Right. And not to say what I did before didn't have substance, but this really speaks to me in so many ways because it comes from the heart, and there's a lot of real personal stories and learnings that come out of that. So that's kind of the mindset behind why, you know, Gifts from Others exists.
There you go. And all the proceeds from this book are benefiting a foundation called Kids Now.
Yeah, it's actually, there's $1 from every book that's being sold will benefit Kids Now. It's a youth mentoring organization that works specifically with grade 7 and 8 students, really teaching them about positive choices, how to become personal leaders, accountability, build their communication skills, build their self-confidence. It's an important program. I actually volunteered with them as they have volunteer coaches that go into the school system and work with grade 7 and 8-year-olds to really teach them these valuable lessons and, in a sense, be the mentors that we were talking about previously. And considering sort of all the things happening in our community, gun violence is huge these days, and really talking about really encouraging youth to think about the choices that they make and help make those positive choices in the right direction. So that's kind of the organization where their premise is. And having experienced that and been a volunteer with it, it really spoke to me on their significance and impact and importance, which is why I've included them in this whole project.
That's a great thing that you got, what you're doing here. Whenever I hear something where someone's helping kids out or doing something for charity, it's a great thing that you have going. And well, like, what's your next project after this?
Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, I'm still trying to get through this one, but you know what? I've always been really good at just going where what speaks to me and what where I need to go, kind of a thing. And again, the most important thing we can do for ourselves is really sticking close to the things that we're passionate about. Because if you're really passionate about something and you're operating under that umbrella of your passions, like wherever you go is good. So for me, I chances are I may not write a book about skydiving anytime soon, but who knows? Maybe I might have another about basketball, or maybe I do something about more motivational type stuff, or how to teach people to become better leaders, or whatever. So that I don't know where it's going to be, but it will be where my strengths are suited for sure.
I like that. Would you mind sharing some of your favorite quotes from the book?
Yeah, it's funny when we talk about favorite because they're like your children, right? Like, how do you pick just one?
That's a lot of kids.
Yeah, there's 500 of them. Oh my goodness, I'm busy.
Yeah, I would think it'd have to be.
And again, a lot of these, how I encapsulate these are that these are important life lessons that are in the form of quotes, expressions, and thoughts. And one of those thoughts, I said that recognizing and giving yourself credit for the little things you do helps you do the same for others. And really, again, so much of what we do starts with us, but it spills out to other people. And if you recognize what you can do, it's really easy to point out something at in other people as well. So that's what that's about. Achievements onto themselves are great, but they taste even sweeter when you were told it couldn't be done. And I mean, how many times have we heard in our lives that, this can't be done? And you say, all right, let me give it a shot, and you accomplish it. Oddly, you can't write a book.
There's nothing better than proving someone wrong.
Well, hey, I mean, if you want to set motivation, how can you?
Exactly.
It's a great thing. So, one more? Do one more?
Well, something I noticed actually on the page you were just on, you have in that book, I mean, the one side was a bunch of quotes, but then you had one big quote on the other side.
Yeah.
Why did you decide, or how did you decide which quotes to make larger, which smaller?
So what I did, here's what I did, and those big quotes, actually, those ones don't belong to me. I actually went out to the originators of those quotes and said, what you did, what you said at this exact moment, it spoke to me. So much so that I want to use it in my book. So what I had done is I created different themes and different chapters. So the book itself is broken down into 4 specific sections. There is the first section is called the light bulb moment, which is about awareness. And all the quotes into that section speak to what awareness is. The second section is called making yourself better. And it's talking about things like your character and your attitude and composure. And then there's a sort of quote that encompasses what all that means. The third section is called, and I shouldn't, oh my goodness, I forgot the third section.
That's okay.
The third, I remember the fourth section, because the fourth section is called Connecting the Dots.
There we go.
Right? And essentially, connecting the dots is about reflecting back over your life experiences. And that's an important one, because when you stop and when you're going through experiences, in that exact moment, it doesn't always make sense, because life doesn't always make sense living it forward. When you stop and look back, you're like, oh, I did that because of this, and now I know why I did that, and you can connect the dots in that fashion. So and within that section, there's quotes about legacy, about reflection, about your personal destiny. Those are sorts of things that are encompassed in that. Let me get the third one. My goodness.
While you're looking for the third one, do you intend this book for the grade
Approach
7
to living.
Approach to living.
Approach to living.
Forget my question. Let's talk about that.
How you live your life. How you live your life, and the steps that you do to become a successful winner, and what that it actually means. So, approach to living is that third section.
What's your approach to living?
Positivity.
Yeah.
It's just You know, trying to be the best possible husband, father, son, community member as I possibly can.
But what about on your worst days? What about the days where everything's going wrong and you just want to be realistic and think,
Yep.
sorry, this day's garbage. It's a lost day. What do you do?
What I strive to do is make those days into moments.
Oh.
I don't want it to have. I don't have bad days. I have bad moments, and when I keep that in perspective, that changes things. So much of what we do is our perspective on mindset on life. So yeah, I don't strive for bad days. It's bad moments that I strive for sure.
So having been a mentor, who is your mentor?
Several people. Certainly my mother, honestly, was probably the biggest one because of just watching her example as a single parent, and so the trials and tribulations associated with that. I have an older brother as well, another older sibling who I've learned an awful lot about. In the book, I encapsulated a few. There was a woman who I worked with many years ago who her name was Terry. She sort of took me under her wing and said, I want to show you what I know. And she did that because she saw the potential. And she saw something good in me and she said, you know what, I want to help you along. So, but I've really had so many. I've had tons. But those are just quick ones that come to mind.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll have more as well in years to come.
For sure.
Audley, thank you so much for joining here today. Awesome. Fantastic. The book is called Gifts from Others. You can check out giftsfromothers.com for more information. We're going to be back on Daytime with Mag Ruffman when we come back after this.